Hey guys, Scott here, just having fun playing games, making videos. I am back with more Master of Orion, but not just any Master of Orion. No way. I've spent, what, 3 weeks? Something like that? Trying to mod this game to my liking. And this video right here, I was thinking about going in straight into playthrough, but I think I'm just going to explain what I did first, and then I'll make another video of the playthrough, because I basically balanced all the races to my liking to the point where I don't really have a favorite anymore because I like everything they have. So let me show you. Unfortunately, I did start another playthrough with the Klackons, but that doesn't really work anymore with the changes I made. So I ended up deleting the game I had saved, and unfortunately I'm gonna have to start over. Thankfully, I only produced one video from that playthrough, so it's not that big of a deal that I deleted it. So let's go to new game, and I just want to show you real quick that this is not everything. Some of it's cut off because it's so much, but you can see that a lot of stuff is just here now. This isn't actually my doing. I have to give credit where credit is due. Some guy on the forums named Spud Dastardly, I think it is, he got these files to edit from someone else who was able to extract them from, and I don't even know, it's a little complicated, but he posted his mod version of it, and I downloaded that, and then I just kind of tweaked it from there. So what happened is he rearranged everything so that you get every single stat. Like, I believe originally you couldn't choose security, you couldn't do what is it, all this morale stuff, like you couldn't change that. So I'm very happy, and omniscience, he also enabled that as well. So I'm very happy I could tweak all that, but basically I just took these and I didn't worry about the score balancing, these positives and negatives. So this doesn't really work with my mod at the moment, which is fine because I'm not interested in doing custom races anymore, because I can just customize the actual race, which I find so much better. So you can just see here all the stuff that I did. I renamed all of the stats too, to something a little bit more creative, you know, descriptive, and I like it. Although it looks like I got 2 of these, so ignore that one. But yeah, I got like poor farmers, skilled farmers, expert farmers, all the workers, all the scientists, the economy, pollution. This is a big one that I had to change. See, originally the game was calling it pollution tolerance, but that's not what it is. Your race is not more or less tolerant to it, because the pollution itself does not affect your race. It affects the planet's biome, which then affects your race. So it's not really that your race is more or less tolerant to the pollution, it's more that the race is creating more or less pollution. So as you can see, I changed it to pollution generation, and in the case of total tolerance, I changed it to total prevention. So that's a big thing. And I'm going to explain more about this when I talk about the silicoids. But I just wanted to show you that, and then we got all the gravity. Let's see. Yeah, he changed it so that you could pick just the uber planets, whereas normally the game would be like, what is it, plains dweller, cavernous, something like that, and it includes both the uber planet and the homeworld biome. But he kind of split these up, so it's making more stuff on the screen. And then you got all the combat stuff. I kind of just did my own flair with this. And ship cost, I changed it to ambitious engineers, because it's kind of like, you know, the engineers are working on making the ship very efficient. Like they're really trying to make it so that it's easier to produce. So I think that fits pretty well. And then you got all the combat, just the weak, agile champion fighters, and then Marines train faster. My idea with this was that the races who have this are the Terran and the Sakkra. They are a race that their population is used to combat, and it makes sense that as a whole, what am I trying to say, like their sense of national pride makes it so they want to be fighters. They want to prove themselves in combat. Therefore, it would make sense that they would have more people signing up to be Marines, be recruits. So it'd be much easier for them to get Marines trained faster. And then you got extended barracks, and then just assimilation is ineffective, influential, and this is for the Meklar, and Spud, he made it so that the Meklar are kind of like the Borg from Star Trek, which I thought was so awesome. So I had to change the description of this to resistance is futile. I just love that. But yeah, it makes the assimilation of invader races immediate, and then we got like security, trusting, cautious, suspicious, spies, clumsy, shrewd, devious. Morale is belligerent, timid, loyal, resolute, and unwavering. Unwavering, I gave this to the Klackons since they're a hive mind, and I'm loving it so far. I've done a little bit of testing. So that's kind of just the descriptions of everything. There's been so many changes that I made, and I'm going to have to hopefully just remember them as I play the game, because I could talk for who knows how long. So let's go back. Are you still going to talk? Okay. Alright, so let's start with the Alkari. Originally in the files they had the militarist trait, but then it was kind of like made. If any of you know computer coding, if you do a number sign or a pound sign in front of stuff, it kind of makes it so it doesn't read it. So it was there, but then they kind of made it so that you couldn't, like the computer wouldn't read it. So I pretty much just took that off so it would enable again, and I gave it back to them, and I changed what it does. Instead of being like ground troop based, I changed it to the command points, because like it says right there, they will build and maintain a large starfleet at all times. So it was really dumb that, the militarist trait didn't have anything to do with spaceships. It had everything to do with ground. So I thought that was really dumb. So I changed it, and you can see there, and then natural pilots, similar to what it was before, but I upped the travel speed bonus because these guys are supposed to be like super good with space flight, so it makes sense that their ships would be more efficient, faster. They focus on flight. They're supposed to be like birds. So, and also I gave them a little bit of morale bonus. They're very loyal. They have a very religious society, so. And of course I kept the homeworld artifacts, and I don't remember if the current game version, I've made so many changes I don't remember what was and what isn't. But I think at one point they did have a large homeworld, and I decided to give them back simply because there wasn't too much more to these guys. And I'm trying to make these guys really diverse compared to one another, so you have that, and then the Bharathi.
The harsh
We're going to listen to Michael Dorn.
The Bharathi.
Okay, I just turned off the volume for just Master of Orion, so now I can switch between these guys and not listen to Michael Dorn. So I kept them as ecologists, but I upped the pollution generation to 50% lower instead of just 25. And then I created this trait. I got a little proud of myself. I made the little icon and everything. They're really strong, they're brawny, so I grouped the two ground combat champion fighters and the high gravity tolerance, excuse me, into one trait, just so that it's not cluttering up the screen that much, because what I was finding is I was giving so many traits to one race that it was pushing this text all the way down to the bottom of the screen. So I started trying to make it more grouped together and more polished and friendly. And then I kept their large homeworld and rich minerals, so they get a little bit of boost in the early game. Like, I didn't want to change them too much, but I wanted them to be more, more specialized to what they already were specialized in. And now we have the Darlok. These guys, I wasn't really sure what to do with them, because the only thing they had going for them was the spying, and the spying in the game right now isn't that great. It really isn't. So in order to give them something that they just excel at, I changed, not this, but, no, not that, stealthy, there. I just changed the mission. Here, again, I'm not really sure. It says, the tooltip says that they perform missions faster, but something else that I was reading while editing the file said mission risk. So I don't know if that's like, it's a higher chance of doing it, or it just takes them less turns. I don't know what that is, but regardless, they're way better at it now than the other races. So I wanted to make it pretty much so that they had a much easier time spying, because that's pretty much all they have going for them. The other thing is, I gave them that. You see that food? They consume 75% less food. This is something that I added to them that just gave them something unique. Because if you look at him right here, he's like this energy thing encased in an artificial container. So I'm pretty sure these guys are supposed to be like spectral or ethereal. They very much remind me of the ethereals from World of Warcraft, if any of you have seen those guys. So I kind of kept that theme, and it makes sense. If they're energy, they would still need more energy to sustain themselves, but not much. So the way I see it is they still have food, they still make it, but they kind of like absorb the energy instead of digesting it. Therefore, they need a lot less food. And just to balance this out, because 75% less food consumption is huge, I made it so that they farm less food overall with poor farmers. And it makes sense. I mean, if they are a race that, they've never had the need to have much food, they never would have taken steps to improve their food gathering methods. Therefore, poor farmers. It makes sense. And they're all about the withdrawing and trying to weaken their enemies first before killing them. So it just doesn't really make sense to me to have them have strong ground combat. And I think this is just one more thing to make me, the player, and hopefully the AI, just not use them in ground combat that much. I think they're much more a race that would rather bomb someone out and just kill them off and just be done with them. And the other thing is, if you listen to the opening scene, it says the marshes of Nazim. Now, there was no homeworld swamp planet already in place. At least I don't think. And it makes sense. Like, marshes of Nazim, it's probably a swamp planet. And what was the other thing? If you look on the website, there's talk about how the planet itself, like travelers came to it, and it was very dark and murky and haunted. So I think the whole planet is supposed to be a swamp planet. So I don't know why they didn't start with this. So the other thing is, just for game balancing sake, it kind of helps because that 75% less food consumption is really big. So these two things combined kind of balances it out, but still gives them the edge on the food consumption. And that's that for them. I kept the diplomat, and even though that the spies down there, it doesn't stack with this, other races have diplomat, like the humans, so I still kept the spying in there. And speaking of humans, here we go. These guys, I really didn't change all that much. I just kind of renamed what they had. I think they were pretty good with what they already had. I just kind of increased what they did. So they still got the diplomat with the 5% morale and minus 10% to spying. And then you have charismatic. I didn't really change this because I wasn't really sure how big of an impact that they really have. They seem to do just plain well with diplomacy from what I could tell. But what I did do is I increased the amount of credits they get from trading. I think they should be far more credit focused and do a lot more buying out and just building a trade structures. So this would help them do that. They can focus less on just waiting for production and actually buying stuff. It makes much more sense. And I kept the minus 20 security. I just renamed it trusting. But this in and of itself was not enough. Like, the humans just were weak every single game I played. Yeah, they had good credit. They could possibly win an economic victory, but they couldn't stand up to any of the other races. So I gave them a little bit more of a research edge with 25%. And here we go, the Klackons. Oh, these guys have been my favorite for so long, and I think I got them pretty good. First off, I changed it to, what was it before? Oh, industrialist. Yeah, I took off the industrialist because, first off, they're uncreative, so the fact that they start with technology just didn't really make that much sense to me. They're supposed to be like really slow as far as learning new things, so I took off industrialist and I gave them hive mind, which, first off, morale unwavering. Their morale is always 100%, which I think is awesome. And it's a little overpowered because you can just immediately up your credits from population. So in order to balance that out, you can see I gave them a weak economy with 50% fewer credits. So that kind of balances that. But I kept the high production and the high food generation. I just grouped it into this trait. And then you have subterranean, that's still normal, and uncreative. I further increased the slower research up to 50% because these guys are really supposed to be behind in the technological sense, but they're supposed to be able to expand and have a huge fleet very easily. Now, in addition, I was testing these guys, and they just seemed to go wild as far as expansion. So I figured it'd probably be it kind of makes sense. Like if it's a hive mind, they probably are focused so much on themselves and the single mental entity connection that they can't really concentrate on shooting stuff. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I needed to give them some additional penalty because that production and food is just so much of a bonus that it was making them overpowered. And even though research kind of balances it out, it's still not that much of a balance. So I gave them the ship combat inferior gunners as well, just to kind of balance out their space fighting a little bit. And then Homeworld Large, I think at one point there was a Homeworld Huge for them, but I didn't want to make them too ridiculously overpowered at the beginning. So even though really they're not that overpowered at the beginning, but still I don't want to make them too powerful. So that's that. I think this works well from what I've tested so far, but I'm anxious to play more. And then we have the Meklar. I kept them industrialists, but they are now 50% faster production instead of 25. Cybernetic, I didn't change at all. I think this is perfect just the way it is. Half food consumption, and then they get auto repair just from the start. I think it really works well. Now, these guys, every single test that I've done with them, they were just expanding like crazy. So I kind of had to slow them down a little bit with the minus 25% population growth. And of course you have, courtesy of Spud Dastardly, the immediate assimilation, which I haven't really seen the AI use this too well, but I have a feeling if I play these guys, which I probably will, that this is just going to work out so nice. Because as soon as, like, the early game would probably be a little dull because everyone's just colonizing, but as soon as I start taking over worlds by force, this would be just amazing. And then we have the Mrrshan. Now these guys have just been like the hot topic of debate on the forums about just how they've been messed up compared to how they were in the previous games, and they're like weak and they don't do well. Well, taking cues from Spud again, I gave them back some of their old traits from the previous game. They have, what is it? Master Gunners. Beam attack is 50% higher than normal. This is amazing. Hopefully. I haven't really tested it too much, but they're really good at combat in the early game because of this. And I think it does fit them. Like, I don't know if it's here. Yeah, I think it's the description of them on the website. It does say they are Master Gunners or something like that. They're really good with elite crews and attacking other ships. They're very precise. And of course they're also militarists, which means they have a larger fleet than normal. They're cats and they're predators and they're hunters, so it makes sense that they would have ground combat. So I gave them 25% higher ground combat rating. And just even though this is all really powerful as it is, they didn't really seem to have anything else going for them. And this isn't quite enough compared to, say, the Alkari that gets like both beam defense, beam attack, and speed. So I gave them 25% faster population growth, and I named it Promiscuous, which it kind of makes sense. They're cats. I mean, I don't know if you're understanding what I'm meaning, but it fits in my opinion. So, plus the way she appears, it just seems like they would be a promiscuous race. And we got the Psilons now. These guys I was really playing around with, trying to make them fit more into their lore, but it was really, really hard. So I kept the technologist, but I made it so that they had all of the starting technology instead of, I can't remember what the other ones were originally, but they now start with all of the first technologies, and they have artifacts. And then the creative, I bumped it up to 75% research. Now, I've done some testing, and it seems like the Psilon are ahead of the game as far as technology if I have it here, but not if I have it 50%. If I have it 50%, they don't seem to be able to catch up because they're just not expanding as far as the other races, which makes sense. They're not supposed to. They're supposed to be like keeping to themselves and just doing their own thing. So that's fine there, but I need them to be at 75%, otherwise they don't keep up in the technology race, which they're supposed to be able to. So the only thing is, there's been a few playthroughs that I've done so far. Oh, excuse me, that's breakfast coming back up. I had waffles. um, what was I saying? Oh, a few playthroughs that they just went crazy. They expanded super fast, they dominated all the other races, and I think that was kind of just like a fluke, but I'm not sure. Like I'm not sure 75% is too much or not enough yet, but I'm gonna do more playthroughs. And this, I'm not sure about this. I was playing around with them having either 30% more command points or total pollution prevention. Just something unique about them besides the research. And I didn't really like the pollution prevention. I think that's part of what made them go crazy and get ahead of everyone. So I've only done one playthrough with the additional command points, but I think this works better anyway because they're supposed to have, they only keep fleets of highly advanced warships as defensive measures. So it kind of makes sense that they would have bigger, more powerful ships compared to the rest of the races. And because they have bigger ships, they have bigger supply costs. So I gave them the additional points not so they can have a larger army, but just so they can have a they could have bigger ships compared to the same number of ships as the enemy. You get what I'm saying? Instead of having like being only able to have like 5 frigates, 3 destroyers, and a cruiser, these guys would have the command points to have like 2 cruisers and 3 destroyers or something like that. You know, and it makes sense because they're supposed to have highly advanced warships. These guys are very much like, if any of you guys have seen Stargate, these are very much like the Asgard. And I want to make them like the Asgard. Few ships, but powerful ships. And unfortunately, I don't think the computer AI will do that, but if I ever play these guys, that's how I'm going to play them. Few ships, but big, powerful ships. And then we got Loyal. These guys have a controller. They say it's a dictatorship, but I'm not really sure how that works. But it's one Psilon dictating everything, which I guess is a dictatorship. But yeah, so it makes sense that they're kind of like loyal and they're, you know, they're being kept in line as it were, but they're also just good people. So they get 5% morale, and then in order to do low gravity, I wanted their homeworld to be low gravity, so it makes sense that they have low gravity tolerance. And the only way to do that is to have poor homeworld minerals and small homeworld. I don't really like this, but it's the only way to give them low gravity. So because of these penalties, that's why I gave them even more research and the additional command points. Because they just needed something to help balance out this poor start. Like, they are really slow starting because of this. So hopefully in playing these guys, I can play them how I want them. And then we got the Sakkra. These guys were the first guys I ever played, and I didn't really change them all too much. I just kind of increased what they already had. They are expansionists, and I added, there you can see, I added these aspiring recruits and the travel speed bonus just to give expansionists something tangible to start with. All the other ones like industrialist and diplomat and ecologist, they all had something tangible. Like ecologist had the pollution and industrialist has the production. Expansionists didn't have anything. They just gave them additional technology, and I thought that was so dumb. It was like, really? So it's kind of hard to give them something that, excuse me, again, give them something substantial that fits with expansionists. Like you can see, they hunger for territory, they tend to be aggressive in border disputes. There's nothing really that I can give them that really directly affects that, but, you know, I did the best I could with Marines train faster and travel speed bonus. This makes it so that they can get to systems faster, which actually makes sense because it does say they emphasize propulsion and planetary technology. And then the Marines training faster. The Sakkra are a very warlike race in general. Where is it? Yeah, it's not here, but it's in the main website's description of them. Like it talks about how there's fights to the death in the street of Sakkra trying to prove themselves the strongest. So it really makes sense that they would have aspiring recruits. They would have willing Marines that were seeking combat and honor and glory and stuff like that. So, I gave him that, and then Warlord. Warlord was, I don't remember what it was before, honestly, but this is what it is now because this is what the tooltip says. I don't understand. I can't remember what it was before, but I remember it did not match the tooltip. So they set their sights on domination by physical force, training extensively in ground combat, so that gives them the higher rating, and they maintain a large reserve force of warriors with the extended barracks. And I think before only the Mrrshan had this, but it didn't really make sense to me to have the Mrrshan be like this. I mean, it sort of does, but I like the idea of them just being agile fighters, and then they are more better with the space combat than the ground. So there's that, and then this, they are very prolific. If any of you don't know what that means, they breed like crazy. So I upped that from 50% to 75% because they were already pretty good at it, but I wanted them to be the best at it. I want them to really expand, and the playthroughs I've done, they actually haven't expanded all that fast just because they have poor scientists. And I'm not sure if I really want 50% or just 25% reduced, but I'm going to have to do more playthroughs of this. Originally, I think they were repulsive, and then it got taken off, and then something, I think Spud's mod took it off, but I kept it with them just because they need more penalties than what they have. And it makes sense because if you read here, it says your attitude, smell, appearance, and even your voice repel other creatures instinctively. Now, the Silicoid are definitely repulsive to everyone, but I think these guys would be repulsive, not necessarily because of their appearance, maybe a little bit, or their attitude necessarily, but probably definitely the smell. These guys live in an overpopulated, crowded area, and they're reptiles. If any of you have had reptiles as a pet, I raise my hand with that. I've had a gecko. They can stink really, really bad, and I think that makes sense. So they're not repulsive because they're ugly. They're repulsive because they smell. So, and the other races know they smell. So when they see them across their ship communications, they're just like, ew, these guys. And then we got the poor scientists, which I said before, they're still jungle creatures, and their homeworld size, I can't remember what it was originally, but I toyed with it being small because my initial testing with these guys, they just expanded super fast. So I kind of wanted to slow them down. Oh, no, I know what it was. It was the fact that they weren't expanding enough. So I was hoping by having a smaller homeworld that it would like force them to expand further. It's like, their homeworld is small, therefore they're looking all the more sooner to get off the world and find more space. I actually don't, now that I say that, I don't think it was the computer AI having a problem with that. I think I was just trying to fit it to the lore of them having an overcrowded homeworld. But they needed the large homeworld. It was too slow with the small homeworld. And then we got the Silicoid. These guys, I don't know what to do with them. I'm going to have to wait till they change it. But what I'm talking about is this. The pollution. Originally, they didn't have any pollution. The only thing they had was tolerance. Or I think I forget if in early access they had anything to do with pollution or not. But Spud's mod gave them pollution prevention completely, total 100% tolerance. And then I was like, it's not, yes, these guys are tolerant, but the way pollution works affects the biome. So this should be changed to pollution prevention. And now I'm thinking, as far as lore is concerned, these guys don't prevent pollution at all. They just don't care. So what I was doing was actually increasing the pollution, which I did. You can see there the pollution generation is 25% higher. I was really increasing it, and what I was doing in my test playthroughs is just letting all the planets degrade down to either toxic, they would have already been radiated, or the volcanic ones, which absorb pollution like crazy. So I was pretty much just doing that. Oh my goodness, I'm burping like crazy. I was just doing that and just not worrying about the environment. But then when I tested the AI and how they did it, they just the computer is stupid with this because the pollution generation was even higher, and instead of ignoring it, the computer would constantly be doing pollution cleanup, and that was making it so that they were falling behind. So I don't know what to do with that. I want these guys to play the way I want it. I want the computer to play the way I play it, which it just isn't programmed to do that right now, and I can't change that. So I'm not really sure what to do with them. I kind of just left it as is, making it so that I want to keep them environmentally indifferent right here, because it totally makes sense. They don't care. You can even see right here in Lithivore, it says, and sees little use for plant or animal life. Like, it makes sense. They don't care. They really don't care about the environment. But the other thing is, their population growth is slow, yes, but their total amount of population that can be on a planet is um, what's the word I'm looking for? Gimped. Okay, excuse me. I just had to cough. Um, Gosh, what was I saying? Oh, they're the I hate this. The biome quality, like the higher you go, tundra up to what is it, Terran or ocean Terran, and then Gaia. The higher you go, the higher total population can be on a planet, which it makes sense, but not for these guys. And I think it's just totally unfair that, if they're going to play it so that their biome, they just degrade the biome down to like 5 population units, that they can't ever really get that much high population, which it does make sense, because it says impressively long lifespans and low birth rates have resulted in civilization of relatively few individuals with lots of experience. So I was toying with possibly making it so that they get a production boost, a research boost, and a credit boost, and just make it so that they have so few population, like each colony is probably only going to have 1 or 2 population units ever, and that sounds good, but the problem with that is they would have to have super credits from population, because each planet I would still build all the buildings, and all those buildings would have that same maintenance cost to them, but those planets wouldn't have nearly as many population on that planet to counteract the maintenance cost. That's something that I realized in doing playthroughs with these guys. So I don't know what to do. Right now, I'm just going to keep them like it is, super slow population growth, with increased pollution generation, but also a little bit better with production. So we'll see how that is. The other thing is I actually went to the file that determined the population growth factor from the mineral richness of the planet, and I actually increased all of those drastically. So even though you can see their population growth is 50% slower than normal, it is, but only for like the poor and the ultra poor and abundant planets. The lower three is kind of significantly lower, but I kind of made it an exponential curve so that if I colonize any planet that's ultra rich, that would kind of counteract that 50% slowness overall. So these guys can, if they colonize the right worlds, they can keep up. Kind of, well, like, keep up's probably not the best word, but they can still grow much faster than they otherwise would have. And then they're repulsive, of course. They have to be repulsive. Everyone thinks rock creatures are ridiculous. And I kept the gravity tolerance, and I don't remember what their homeworld was, but I think just for the sake of starting out, that because they don't have food, they need ultra rich. and they need huge. And the other thing is this makes it so that their homeworld is high gravity, which totally, in my opinion, makes sense for these guys to be, rock creatures. They're used to the high gravity, and it makes sense. Now, part of me was saying, I understand the high gravity, but how are they good in low gravity? How? Because the way I was thinking of it with the space bears over here, that they're only high gravity, not low gravity. And what I'm imagining in my head is, if they're in a super low gravity environment, they're going to have so much strength that they're just going to be like, bouncing everywhere. Like, I'm imagining space bears in a space station with very little gravity, and they go to like move, and they just like they're bouncing off the walls because they're just using so much strength to just propel them everywhere, and they can't get any work done because of it. So that makes sense with why they're not good with low gravity. But the Silicoid, how would they be good with low gravity? And honestly, all I can really think of is that they're not biologically, their bodies aren't biological. Therefore, they don't have the same problem with muscle coordination that biological beings would. So they would be able to have precise movements in low gravity. Yes, they're super heavy. Yes, they would easily be able to float around, but at the same time, they would be able to compensate for that by only using a tiny bit of strength, like only the amount of strength necessary. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. I don't know if that really makes sense, but I'm just doing my best to try and fit the traits to their lore. That was the biggest thing that I was doing with this rebalancing, is just trying to make them fit the lore. Because some of the traits, they just didn't fit the lore at all, and I was so annoyed with that. So we'll probably play a Silicoid playthrough. I just don't know how I'm going to play it, if I'm going to do it so that I don't care about pollution, or if I'm going to actually try and do pollution. But right now, either way, the AI will care about pollution no matter what I do. So I kind of made it so that, they have to deal with pollution, but they get a bonus to production because of it. And last, but hopefully not least, although in my opinion they are least because they're not one of the original races, like I'm a little annoyed at Wargaming for creating this new Terran race that's just a copy of the humans, except they're warlike, and they haven't brought back the original races yet. Like, I want the Trillarians, and I want the Nolums. I don't really care about the Ilarians, although they're kind of cool in the fact that they're omniscient, but why create this copycat human race and spend time doing this and charge DLC for it if you're not going to bring back the other races yet? I don't know, but this was just, I guess I could go on and on about marketing ploys and stuff like that, but needless to say, they are here and they're full of references, but they didn't really do much. Like, I can't remember what the original traits were, and I don't remember what Spud's traits were, but I kind of just made them just total efficiency when it comes to training for war. I can't remember if they were strategists before or not, but I changed what strategists do. I changed it to ship costs. They get a ton of credits from population because, as you can see, it says always on the brink of a war economy. They have a war economy. They have additional credits from population. They are just taxing the population like crazy and just constantly preparing for war. They also train faster, and they have more total Marines possible, but they're humans. They're kind of weak compared to some of the other races, so I didn't give them additional ground combat rating, even though they probably are they are a militaristic society and they would train for that kind of stuff, but I didn't want their ground troops to be better than the Bears or the Sakkra or the Silicoid. Well, actually the Silicoids don't have any ground improvements, but the Sakkra and the Bharathi, they both have the fighters. Oh, and the Mrrshan. Like, if you really think about it, humans going up against any of these three guys, I don't think they would win. And then of course I needed to give them some kind of penalty, so I just lowered their morale because it makes sense. They're a society that's being dominated by their military leaders. So it makes sense that they would have some morale issues. So I wanted to make it so that the morale wouldn't really affect their money. Like, that's why I gave them plus 50% credits from population. It wouldn't really affect the money, but it would make it so that they would have to deal with people going on strike, which I think fits with them. You know, they're an oppressive government, oppressive military government. They would have some civilians striking. They would have to deal with that. So that's what they have. Hopefully, I haven't really tested them, but yeah, I haven't tested them at all, in fact. But I think this would work well. They have the bigger space fleet, they have the cheaper ships, and they have morale issues. So that's that. That's all the races. Like I said, I haven't done as much testing as I wanted to, but I think in these playthroughs that I'm going to do from here on out, at least until the next update. Hopefully the next big update won't change stuff too much, but it's probably going to change it, so I'm going to have to redo a lot of this stuff. But the playthroughs that I'm going to do, that's going to be more of my testing. I wanted it to be like polished as possible, but I have a feeling I'm going to encounter stuff that's just like, oh gosh, why didn't I fix this? Or, oh my goodness, this really needs to be fixed. I didn't realize it. So that's that. Gosh, I don't even know how long I've been talking, but it's been a while, and that's going to be it for this video. I'm just letting you guys know what I did as far as the races were concerned. A lot of changes. Hopefully they are all good changes when I make a game. So hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you in the first playthrough that I do with modded.